Okay, hi. Today we are talking about how menopause made me cheat. We are talking with Angela Zerly, who is going to be telling us her story of infidelity, which is incredibly brave of you and vulnerable of you and powerful of you. And I just want to thank you, Angela, for being here. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much, Dolly. I appreciate that.
We've been trying, Angela and I have been trying to do this for a while, so I am excited that that we can finally connect. And honestly, I'm not even going to give anything away here. I'm just going to pass the mic over to you and just walk us through kind of your story and what you're doing now.
Sure. So actually, here's what I'm doing now. Right now, I am working with women going through the phases of menopause. So it kind of leads to where everything kind of happened back in my 30s, which we can just keep that a high level right now for you, and then we can always talk about that later. But the story goes like this. I was in my 30s, and there were a lot of a new marriage, first marriage, uncertain of new marriage and all of that. But more importantly, what I didn't know was the fact that I was going through a change of my life, but what had masked a lot of those things was the high stress situations that I was in. Obviously, new marriage and unsure, like everybody else is. It was a marriage that had, four kids as well. And then I had a niece that came to live with us. So all of these things kind of piled on top of each other. And then, not to mention, I had issues medically where I had irregular periods, they were heavy flows. And then I also had issues with taking birth control because I had an active sex life and all of these things that later showed up for me as being part of what I was going through at the same time dealing with a very high anxiety, very high stress, which put me into the mode of wanting to lash out, wanting to reach out in a way that I never imagined I would. I say this now, I'm a person that is loyal, and it might be hard for some people to hear that now because I've been on the path for a long time. But back then, it was an outreach to actually lash out at all the things that were coming my way. Like I didn't want to be a mom or a stepmom. My niece came to live with us. And so I had told my husband, hey, you do that and I'll be the good person. And so with that being said, it threw me into a whirlwind of anger and resentment and all of these rage type of behaviors that I had to the point of where I actually had an emotional affair with somebody and I let it get to the point of where we actually had a physical affair. I even brought this person into my home with my husband knowing this. And I thought he didn't know. He did know, but you always think you're hiding things. But it was a big cry out for me, but I didn't know how to do it. So I just went to the extreme, which I look back and I say that wasn't me. Like I don't even know who that person was at some points. So this is kind of how the rhythm went. And then I found out that I was in a state of perimenopause early in my 30s to where I literally then had it affirmed where I had a partial hysterectomy and then thrown into menopause at 36 and a half. So all the chains of events that led to where I was made me decide to cheat and to go that route, which I stand by all my actions of what I did because it's something that I've learned from, and I've done a lot of things that actually have had to get me to a better place of, I guess I would say, healing not only myself, but my spiritual self, where I signed myself into a facility down in Tennessee with five other women and then 35 other people that were there that literally were the people that got cheated on by us, the cheaters. It was very hard to actually face people that you could possibly be looking at and going, I cheated on, your husband with, but it's just that whole process of that. And then I actually went to my church And in my church, I had signed myself up for classes on people who were addicted to sex. I thought I had a sex addiction problem. I thought I had sexual anorexia because I only came in spurts. I had all these things that I was doing on the outside. And as much as they probably were part of it, and I thought something was wrong, I really was able to separate a lot of it out where I could say if I had followed the path of where I was and to where I was going, I was still in perimenopause and I had no idea I was until I actually came out of my surgery and then flew into menopause. And there you have kind of the story of where I'm at.
Do you think that the stresses that you had in your relationship, the four kids, the niece, and all that stress, do you think stress is something that can, contribute to the early onset of perimenopause?
I do. I think it could exacerbate it, especially since you don't know it's happening. And, I say to individuals now, keep a journal. Like it doesn't have to be a major journal. It could be on a calendar. When you start, especially when people around you start seeing things and they tell you things like I was hearing that stuff. I wasn't paying attention because the people that was saying it to me, I was tuning out because I didn't want to hear what they had to say, but they were experiencing it. And that piece helped me outside of where I was. But there was more stress than I could handle, and I was too overwhelmed. And then I actually was mirroring a lot of behavior that I was seeing in my close relative, which is my niece, which then turned into a whole nother level of facing the darker self, they call the shadow self of the individual, where you don't want to face it, but I had to, and it was hard. And that's part of the piece. I would say that if you're not managing your stress and if you're not finding ways to actively get it out in a proactive way, yes, it can exacerbate it. And also keeping a very good log about your menstrual whereabouts is key. And that's finding right doctors and things like that to help you through those things.
Hmm. Yeah, and I can relate to that. I went into I was perimenopausal early on due to stress in my marriage. Like I know exactly when it all happened, and it was within a couple of months of that, my entire cycle and everything shifted. Um, in this group, we'll all often get comments from husbands who are frustrated because their wives no longer want to be intimate. And one of the responses is usually how she had her hormones checked. Or a woman will be on here complaining about her not wanting to anymore. And she still loves her husband, but she doesn't want him to touch her. Now, I hear a lot of even through my own Googling and researching, you hear that a lot. You hear that. And I know that you're going to bring the science behind that also in the next visit. But I think that you've also said that it can be the opposite too. Some women have the exact opposite effect, where instead of not wanting to be intimate, they actually desire it more. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. And that was with me. Um, Now I don't know the percentage out there because the form of expression, the form of release to go that extra, like it's more of the, how can I say this? I had that extreme. It's one or the other. It's either all or nothing. So that mentality. So if I was going to do it, I wanted more because it fueled a piece of me that allowed for me to express my sexual prowess, but also to, um, I would say, get back at my husband. Now, if that's the cheating aspect, if you're with your husband, it could be something deeper that you are wanting to, like you're going through this change and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to not be sexy anymore. I don't want to be attractive anymore because everybody goes through something along those lines as they do change because they start to feel like they're dwindling inside. So they ram up, what they're doing. And that could be many other things. But with the sex aspect, for me, it was more that kind of crazy, like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna run like this, and
Hmm.
I'm gonna hide. It was familiarity to behavior that wasn't um I guess wasn't effective in the long run. It's childish behavior. And I had a lot of that happening before I learned massive skill sets later on with boundaries and codependencies and conflicts and, how to find safe people and things like that. That came later. I was ill-equipped in my youth. I didn't resolve a lot of my issues. So these things came as an expression of attachment or that love where it bounces back and forth like it's a push pull on your heartstrings. So I was used to this, and this is what I went towards for
Mhm.
sexual piece was just more of what I could do very well as opposed to all underdeveloped skill sets that I had at the time. So yes, it
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, and even when you said that you even brought this person into your home, that is definitely signs of resistance or revenge or frustration or that was a physical you knew what you're doing and I just want to point out I titled this menopause made me cheat. But I also want to point out that Angela isn't here justifying her actions. You have actually really, you have stepped up and done the work to heal. I agree with you when you say people can change, people do change. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the people, first of all, motive, and then understanding, and then doing the work, understanding what was going on with you. You went to the foundation, what was broken at your foundation, and then you took those steps. Now, in your story, you said that you went to um, like a retreat or a clinic, or you checked yourself into something where you were met with 35 women who had been cheated on, and there were just a couple of you that were the actual, other woman or cheater or whatever it is.
There's six of us.
Six of you. Now, can you describe that a little bit, that whole scenario? Because I can imagine how that would have been shameful and spite thrown at you every day. But I mean, that's a pretty brave thing to put yourself into. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so I had found through one of the books that I had read, which I should probably get to you at some point in time in case people want to read it. It was a facility that literally was mentioned in there, and I'm like, I have to go here because I did a whole background, I did a whole brain dump on all the people I had been with, all the reasons I had been with them, and I'm like, I need help. So I went there, and it was very humbling. It was very the guilt was just laden on me. And the thing was, the women that I met were all at different ages, but pretty much younger than me, as far as the five others. But we felt super isolated, even though we had each other, because we, for the first time, had to be in a room with people, even we didn't know them. We knew they were there for the reason of people like our actions and our behaviors were. And when we got into small groups, and this was more of a 12-step kind of program thing eventually, but it was just so hard to hear. But also on the other side, the people that we met that were cheated on were so grateful that we were there. They were so thankful that they could talk to us. Like it wasn't about the fact, like there was anger, but they weren't angry at us. They were angry for missing the mark or not understanding the reason why their significant other did it. And we got a chance to really talk to these people. So even though the insecurity and the unassured like feelings that were coming up, it wasn't met with just, I guess, crazy behavior by the other people. They were just so kind. Like it was nothing I ever imagined it would be. And so I'm grateful that I had it, but it was very difficult to walk in and see 6 to 35. Like that's a big number to the people that were there. It's like you get zero and you're like, oh, all eyes on you. It's not fun that way. So
No, that would be terrifying.
yeah, it was.
Um, I told you this earlier, but a couple of months ago, or actually maybe a month ago, I experienced my really my first emotional, like my most unstable emotional mood swing. I've never been somebody who is emotional or moody or gets angered easily. So when it happened to me, I was very taken aback. And I mean, I found myself standing there with a I think I took farmer sausage, the farmer sausage that has two two pieces of farm, and I was smacking the farmer sausage on a table, and I threw the farmer sausage at the wall, like, and that was the first, and I've been going through it now for at least a couple of years, for a while, but for me to have such a mood swing, such a lack of control over my thoughts, my emotions, everything was just everything felt so overwhelmed. I told my husband immediately, I think I might need to check myself in someplace. I don't know what happened to me. I can't shake this shaking all over my body. I'm feeling unstable. I just want to stay in my room tonight. Like you got to just deal with, the house tonight for like I just need to sleep. And tomorrow I'll make that decision tomorrow, but right now I don't feel stable. And he didn't know really what to say or do, but except for just listen to me. So I guess one of my questions would be, first of all, let's get the men. What do you wish that men would know about this? Or what advice could you give to men whose wives or partners are going through something like this?
What's unfortunately sad is there's not a lot of help for men that are going through this. And, it's that whole men are from Mars and women are from Venus whole thing. We don't understand or we're not seeking to understand because I will speak it because I've lived it. Women don't make sense during this time. Like, so it's hard to say what you want to say, and they should understand. They should just observe. But men, they need some, I mean, support is good, listening is good, just like that. But they need better outlets for them. You could see a sex therapist, you can go to a psychologist, you can go to a therapist, you can go to a men's group, start a men's group, but there's really nothing out there for them. It's sad, but true. And a lot of men just kind of forge through it because at this point in time, there's a very high percentage of divorce because neither one of them can. If you have a strong relationship where you can speak the truth. And I think that's really difficult because you have to be able to hear it and take it and vice versa. There just has sometimes be some silence, but then there has to be maybe just little clues. Because if it's a solid relationship, you can give little things like maybe you want to read this article or maybe you want to try this. I heard this, I've noticed like creating a safe space is key, but that's not always going to be the case, especially when there could be other things out there. So quite honestly, there's not a good avenue. And it's sad to say this. It's really
Mm,
sad. I'd like to offer something like that. I feel like there's a need for it for men to be
mm.
able to handle and manage what their wives are going the different stages. But there's so many variables, Dolly, on what comes in and when, which is just it's like a Russian roulette of crazy. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that even, we're going to go into this next, but the more a woman can understand what her triggers are and when things are coming on, and the more she can articulate and communicate what's about to happen or what's going on to her husband, I feel like there's power in that, that's strength in that, and he will then be, and maybe even as she better understands herself and what her body's going through, she'll be able to maybe guide him with what can
Yes.
help.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking about the fact that, you know, when you can't use words, because what happens obviously during this time is you lose your words. What am I saying? I always love the aspect of describing a physiological something happening in your body. You can describe chills, you can describe being cold or hot or something symptomatic happening. And although it may not make sense, what it is giving the information that that person can relate to. So a feeling can be described like you're describing it to an alien, like, my feet are burning, like, oh, what does burning feel like? It's like fire, hot, whatever. Things like that might be more helpful than words because we get lost in words as opposed to less of what you're saying, could be or it could be sitting back to back to each other and letting that other person hear rather than see, because we all get some type of trigger from looking at that person, especially if that's that person you don't want to like talk to, right? So, you have these aspects that would be helpful as well in descriptors, I think, for
Mhm.
people would be a really good thing, especially when you can't find the words.
Oh yeah. For me, when I feel it coming on, and if we're both in the bedroom or if I'm getting ready, I just say, you have to get out. You have to get out. You have about 5 seconds. You got about 5 seconds. You need to get out of here. And he gets up and he gets out of there as fast as he can. And I get myself under control. I cool myself off and pull myself together. And then I go and I thank him because he listened. And if he were at all to be resistant or tell me, get control of yourself or relax or any of those statements, I'd probably lose it.
Of
But
course.
thankfully, we've had a little bit of these talks, these little warning signs, and I feel like the better we do that. And now you mentioned journaling, which would then play into that. You mentioned journaling and almost helping women understand or see the symptoms because like for you it happened in your 30s, right? So I was in my 40s. So how can a woman like give me like the first couple steps that a woman should do to journal to be able to know the signs and what to do about it?
Well, I want to go back just a little bit. Depends on how much the woman knows herself. Okay. Not there could be a possibility that a woman doesn't really know herself for lots of reasons, which we could name a ton. For this conversation, we'll say perfectionism. We'll say, it's a person who's a people pleaser, something like that. You have to know the makeup of you. And when you know the makeup of you and you know the history of you, the medical history of you, I had hysterectomy issues in my family. Everybody did by a certain time. Everybody had that. So you have to know that piece too when that's coming into play, knowing your markers for the DNA aspect of yourself. Those are things that are scientific that then you can say, I'm an emotional person. I'm a dismissive person. I'm a chatty girl, whatever you know, because whatever you're displaying to the person that you're with, boyfriend and or husband, knows that person. As you start to change, the thing about it is in your 30s is when you start to do the change. So maybe like 32, 33, it could be a calendar just for you. And it could be like just things that maybe the symptoms ahead of time and you start putting them down and you can mark that. If you're a verbal processor like me, you can do live little memos for yourself to say, like, this is how I'm feeling today. Or in the more raw you can be, the better off that you're going to have more of an understanding and or maybe something somebody else sees because if you're awake with it then you can be receptive. If you're not, it's not going to work. So writing it down, typing it out, anything tactile, walking and or going and reflecting at the time, but making it a weekly something to do is going to be super helpful. Find your supportive person that you can talk to about it if it's not your husband, so that you know you're safe and you can actually go to that person and they're not going to do anything to you because it's just an uncharted time. And so it just has to start early in your 30s. I mean, I would say before you're 35 is just start something. Something.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess lastly, I just wanted to ask when this happened to me and I felt so unstable, the first thing I thought was, do I have to check myself in someplace? Because I just felt like I was losing my mind. And so the next day I woke up, I felt so much better, but I still didn't want that to happen again. So for me, I just thought, I just want to get some blood work done. I want to see if my blood work will reflect that something is going on and actually meet with a gynae. Um, can you give like some insight as to what are those first steps that a woman maybe going through this could do?
Unfortunately, blood work is good. I mean, unfortunately, it's not going to be the total answer. It's going to give you something. It's going to take care of the one aspect, okay, which is where you're at now. It is going to change and it changes a lot. You can also do a Dutch test, which is more a P test, okay, and that can give you more of adrenal cortisol, can give you other markers, but just besides the testosterone, estradiol, estrogen, and progesterone, those things of that nature, because we do change daily. And so it's harder with that. But if you're in the perimenopause, which is going to be anywhere from 35 to 50, when you still have your period, the thing is finding a good doctor. Now, at GPs, you could find a diamond in the rough. Okay. A functional medicine doctor or naturopath, something of those natures is going to be more specific with that. Somebody who's dialed into more of the whole self woman aspect, kind of give you the lay of the land, understanding, doing your homework on what is menopause, understanding when your family went through it as well. If you're adopted, it's a little harder because then you've got to dig a little differently, or maybe the people you know. So the first step would just be to get that person, get in and do a full kind of write up where you are, your health history, and things of that nature, because it just gives you the groundwork of where you're at to start. So you start there because then all the work comes after that, right? Like I thought, oh, HRT is my thing. It's going to be, and it is my, I love it. It's going to fix this, 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 and this. And no, it doesn't.
Mhm.
It helps you chemically and it has to be adjusted, but there were many other things I had to do. All my lifestyle skills had to be changed. All the things that I learned to just get through life had to be elevated. I had to learn more and implement more. So I would just say find yourself somebody that's really good. I can get you that information so you can post it in your group. But that is the first and foremost. Just start now. And as you're changing, I would say go through that process with them.
And I know that there's so much more to your story. Like we had decided that we were going to just kind of condense this all into like a summary version of a big part of your life. But who do you work with now? What do you help women with now?
I've been through all the stages of perimenopause. Okay. So I work with them, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. I've been in postmenopause. It's really kind of I want to say I coach, right? But I'm an advisor. I've been there. Like I don't have all the answers. Okay. There's going to be very specific things that I work with. A lot of them are more foundational pieces because as we know, foundational pieces are important to build upon. I have resources of individuals outside of me that do what they do. And that can be anywhere from functional medicine, doctor, naturopath. It could be a pelvic floor specialist. It can be an OBGYN. It could be a cardiologist. It could be personal trainers, nutrition coaches. The list is endless. And I pass them along to those people because I want them to get what they want and what they need because everybody needs something different at a different time. So just creating that vision and pathway for the goals that they want to achieve, it's just taking little steps. And so these women can be anywhere from 35 and up. It's just depends on where they're at and what they're needing and just kind of omit the guesswork and just give them a landing to like move and get past the point that they're at and gain some ground with what they want to do. So I just help navigate that piece.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing your story. I know that it is one of incredible vulnerability. So you're very brave to be here today in this group. And so thanks, Angela. Really, truly.
Thank you. I really appreciate you allowing me to be here because it's been a long time and I have a lot to say about it and I'm happy to answer any questions or anything that you need. I'm an open book.
Thanks.